So I get pretty overwhelmed sometimes, believe it or not. I can hide it pretty well because my emotions are kind of like always the same, but internally I feel it. I feel the stress of being overwhelmed. What I typically end up doing is I take on everything myself. I overload myself with jobs and tasks and things that need to get done. The next thing I do is I procrastinate. I don't do the hard things, I do the easy tasks. And then finally, one of my problems is I tend to be a perfectionist. I'm very competitive with myself, and so I set my standards up here. And those three things combined can lead to a very overwhelmed feeling. Can you relate? If you can relate, stick around because I want to give you 3 ways that you can lower that overwhelmed feeling. And it's actually really not that hard. It's just looking at and thinking of things a little bit differently. Now, the very first thing you need to do if you feel overwhelmed is start to delegate. And I think that is a little bit easier if you are a supervisor at work or you're the boss. But even if you're not, you can't necessarily command people to do things, but you can ask if you can delegate certain jobs to people. Now, right now at my job, so I'm the director of a nonprofit, and I have totally felt overwhelmed the past couple weeks because I am short-staffed. That seems to be a common theme these days, but we won't go down that path. And so the worst thing I do that hurts me is I don't delegate enough tasks. I'm not sure why. I think I feel like, well, I have to take the time to explain it, or I want it done a certain way, and that usually is why we don't delegate tasks. But the truth is, it's worth it. Explaining how to do something usually doesn't take as long as doing it yourself. And really, if you are a supervisor or a boss, you're actually managing and developing your staff well when you delegate tasks to them. The other reason why we should delegate is because it really helps build trust between you and your staff or the people that you work with. And finally, it frees you up for the more important jobs that you need to focus on. And though this primarily applies in the workplace, I think this is true in the home as well. As a parent, it's really important to give your kids responsibilities and tasks around the house. And in the same way that delegating builds trust in the workplace, the same is true in the home. And wives, yes, you may sometimes need to delegate dish duty to your husband. He probably has some time to help. Number 2 we've talked about before is procrastination or not doing the right tasks. In an upcoming video, I'm going to talk once again about my morning routine because honestly, I love it and I love to share it with people. It's really effective and it works for me. But one of the worst things we can do is show up at work and start doing the menial tasks, the things that don't move the company forward, that don't help us get things done. And then we finish all those little things and we feel the weight of all the big things we need to do. So determine the day before or the morning of 1 to 3 max big tasks or goals that you need to accomplish that day. And complete those tasks before you do anything else. Now what I do is I turn all notifications off on my phone, on Slack, and I do not open my email. And I don't know why, but email can get addicting. It was just like an automatic habit for so long. And now I just have a limited time each day that I look at emails. A lot of that I learned from 𝗟𝗃𝗦𝗃 and building a second brain. There's great videos all about that, but I'll talk about it sometime as well. And number 3 is that your standards are too high. Now, as a Christian, I think we should have high standards. We should have the highest standards in our industry. Now, if I'm perfectly honest with myself, I am a perfectionist. I've never achieved it. I don't know if I ever will. Probably not in this lifetime. But I always think through, what do I need to do to make this the very best? And what that does is I fall back into the traps of 1 and 2. I do everything myself, I don't delegate tasks, and I don't do the right tasks. So for example, at the program I run last week, I was just like, oh man, the gym floor has got to get swept. We got to have pens out, we got to make photocopies, and I spent the time doing all those things. They were menial tasks that I easily could have assigned to my staff. And trust me, I had more important things to do, but my perfectionism kicked in and I was just like, I want this done right, so I'm gonna do it. Sweeping the floor and getting pens out. And so of course, I believe we should have high standards, but sometimes we don't need to achieve everything all at once. I think a better approach, especially if you know you are a perfectionist, is determine one standard that you're gonna meet each week. So again, just going from my own experience. I run a mentoring program and lots of kids come to our place each week. And so I want the sound to be right. I want the games to be great. I want our discussion and our Bible study to be absolutely perfect. I want to hear all the kids saying, please give me Jesus. I want our mentors to have a great time and I want them to say to me, Jeff, I can't wait to come back next week. And that is just a few of the standards that I set for myself each week. And so what I'm learning is, you know what? Let's just meet one standard this week. And so rather than setting 25 standards a day that you're trying to meet, just try to meet 1 or 2. And really what this is habit building. Once you can accomplish those standards day after day or week after week, they become habit. They come naturally. And then you don't have to pursue these high standards. They'll just begin to happen. So let me just clarify that one more time. The goal is not to have low standards, it's just to have fewer high standards. And I'm telling you, I know from experience, if you can implement these 3 tips, you will certainly feel less overwhelmed. And this idea of high standards, it applies to our family as well, especially our kids. We can actually be causing harm when we set the bar too high for our kids. Of course, we want them to do well academically. We want them to perform well in their sports or their activities. But we can unknowingly put a lot of unnecessary pressure on our kids when we set the bar too high for them. So in the same way, I think we can help our kids set goals week by week and let them determine what the standard is. Now, if you want to see how I get the most done in the least amount of time, check out this next video.